All right, in this video demonstration, we're going to create a local IPSec policy that duplicates the example found on page 319, figure 6-2. And I'm on server B. We're going to open up our local group policy by typing gpedit.msc. Again, this is just going to affect the local machine, so it's called a local group policy. I'm going to expand the computer configuration, Windows settings, or Windows settings, security settings. And then as we see here, we have our IP security policies on local computer. I'm going to right click, say create IP security policy, say next. We'll call this just a new IP security policy. Next again, finish. Now we're going to begin to make our rules that consist of filter lists and filter actions. So we're going to add a new rule. Next. Next on this screen for all connections. Next. We're going to add a new filter list, and we'll call this rule number 1, filter list number 1, and add that. A lot of wizards as we're setting this up for IPSec. Say next. The source IP address is going to be a specific IP address according to the example, which is 192.168.3.32. And the destination IP address will be my server, my IP address. Next. The protocol is going to be TCP. And 2, the specific port for Telnet, which is 23. That's why knowing those port numbers is very important. We're also going to add another filter list item to accommodate POP3. So we're going to say again next, next, and the specific IP address is going to be 192.168.3.200 according to our example in the book. And the destination IP address will be my IP address going to a specific TCP port for POP3, which is 110. Say next and finish. And okay, so we've got our first one out of the way. Let's hit the radio button after we've made that filter list. Now we need to specify filter action. So again, we're going to do a filter action, and we'll say filter rule number 1, filter action number 1, just to keep it straight. Say next. We are going to negotiate security, require encryption. So we do not want to allow unsecured communication. We want to do integrity and encryption. Next. Finish. Again, we're going to hit the radio button to specify that action with that filter list. We're going to use Kerberos v5, simulating that we're in a domain. Say next. Finish. And then OK. So we have successfully completed the first policy rule. Now let's go back in here and edit the properties of this, and let's make another one. So we can go on our policy rule number 2 according to figure 6-2 on page 319. So we're going to do add again, say next, 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 and we're going to add a new one. So we're going to call this one rule number 2, filter number 2, or filter list, I should say, number 2. Again, I'm just naming these like this so we can kind of keep everything straight. Say add. And the source IP address on this one is going to be all Telnet traffic, so any IP address to my IP address. And the specific protocol is going to be TCP to port 23. Say next for Telnet traffic. Finish. And then we're also going to do POP3. So let's do another filter list from any IP address to my IP address. And the protocol will be TCP, and again POP3 110. Next and finish. We've got that filter list created. Now let's go ahead and make a filter action after we select the filter list number 2. We're going to make a new filter action based on that. Say add. Next. And we're going to call this rule number 2, filter action number 2. Again, this calls for us to block in the book. according to the example. Say next and finish. And we're going to say filter action 2, next, and finish. So now we have 2 rules, 2 filter actions, filter lists and filter actions. And now we need to do our third one according to figure 6-2, page 319. So we're going to go ahead and say add. And we're going to say, again, tunnel does not specify tunnel, which is transport mode. Next, all network connections. And we're going to make another filter list. So we're going to call this one rule number 3, filter list number 3. Say add. Next. Again, this is going to be any IP address to my IP address. Well, okay. And the protocol is any. So the book calls for all traffic to negotiate security. So we're going to say finish and say OK, because we don't have to make anything else. It's just one filter list we need to make. Say OK. And let's go ahead and make let's go ahead and specify rule number 3, filter list number 3, and say next. And let's make a new filter action. And that filter action is going to be called rule number 3, filter action number 3. And this again calls for negotiate security request authentication. So we're going to say do not allow unsecured communication, and we want to do integrity only because we're going to request authentication. Say next, finish. We're going to specify rule number 3, filter action number 3, and we're going to use Kerberos v5 and finish. So now we see we have rules number 1, 2, and 3 that have been specified. And finally we're going to say OK, and then the lab does not call for us to assign the policy, but we would, if we wanted to assign the policy, just right click on it and say assign. Simple enough. That completes this portion of the lab.